It's amazing what you hear out in church parking lots. We were having a conversation there late at night, long after it had become dark. We were talking about the recent upgrades that had been made to the steeple. And she began to go on and on about how great it looked and how bright it was and how far away that you could see that steeple from. Well, I added in that, yeah, and we won't have to worry about it for a long, long time. To which she added, yeah, a long time after I'm gone. Now that is one way of looking at things. Do you have that sort of long-range vision of the impact of what you're doing? She was so proud, and she had the biggest smile on her face and the biggest twinkle in her eye as she recognized the fact that that steeple was going to look beautiful for long after she cared about it any longer. We can so often get ourselves into this view of the here and now. It's important to focus on the details. It's important to focus on the things that are going on right now. But if we can take a step back, we can focus on the bigger picture and the things that will outlast us. Most people can't get themselves to that place. Most people can't get themselves to the place where they are thinking about and rejoicing over the things that might have a small blessing to them, but really they're going to be blessing other people that they might not even know yet, other people who may not have even been born yet. And yet, even if we can't get ourselves to that place of setting aside our own preferences, Paul encourages us to do so like this. Paul said, instead of each person watching out for their own good, watch out for what is better for others. Can you get yourselves to that place where you set aside your own good in order to focus on what is good for other people? Can you set aside your own preferences in order to get yourself to that place? Really, the question that we're asking is this: what are we willing to do to ensure that the faith is passed on to the next generation? How far are you willing to go? What are you willing to do? How much are you willing to give up in order to ensure that the faith is passed on to the next generation? Isn't this what we want? A life that outlasts us. Isn't this what we want? To know that our impact is going to go on and on and on much longer than any of us are around? Don't you want this to be a place where your children and your children's children and your children's children's children will feel at home, will feel welcome and accepted and valued, where they want to pursue the same relationship with God that you might be experiencing? Isn't that what we all want at the end of the day? To know that this doesn't stop with us. Well, speaking of the generational nature of our faith, the Psalms are absolutely littered with the importance of passing on the faith. Dozens of times the Psalms list up this idea, but I just want to bring one to you today. This comes from Psalm 145. The psalmist writes, "One generation will praise your works to the next one, proclaiming your mighty acts. One generation passes it on to the next, telling about how good that God has been to us." That's how the faith goes on. Whenever we've got a long-range vision of what's happening around us, whenever we care more about the people who aren't even here yet than we even care about ourselves. Are you able to get yourself to that place? Can you think of others as better than yourselves? How far will you go to ensure that the faith continues to go on and on and on? It's no secret that we've been undertaking some projects to ensure that this worship and mission space is around for a very long time yet. We've been making some much-needed improvements to ensure that we're able to pass this space on without encumbering others with certain burdens of failing structures and failing systems. You have probably noticed on your walks into this place over, about the past 6 months, lifts outside and various construction equipment. You might not have noticed today because you probably scurried in here to make sure that you didn't get too wet. But those lifts, those construction equipment, they aren't out there any longer. In fact, some of that work, the work of the trim, the flat roof, the steeple, the new columns, all of that work is now completed. And I would say, go out there and stare at it, but again, it's raining. You don't want to go out there today and look at it, and so I thought I would just show you some up-close and personal shots of that. Over the coming weeks, you're going to be hearing a lot more about some of the things that are going on here, the projects that we've already undertaken, the projects that we have yet to do. And by the way, let me just stop and say thank you. Thank you for your generosity and how your generosity has been funding needed improvements like the steeple, the columns, the trim, the flat roof, even before we've began to even ask for your help in funding those projects. Thank you so much for that. So over the coming weeks, we're going to be engaging in a process of discipleship as we look at these projects and the work that God has before us. We're going to begin next week by expressing gratitude, by thanking God for all that God has blessed us with, and even for how this church has been a blessing in our lives. Next week, whenever you enter into this space, you're going to receive gratitude cards, which you're going to be encouraged to fill out in real time. And so, begin thinking now about what you are grateful for. And if you can't be with us next time, or you worship with us online, there's also a link both in the weekly email newsletter and also on the website for how you can go there and fill out gratitude cards to express your gratitude, even if you aren't able to be physically present here with us next time. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to be focusing on ministry impact, on how God is using us here, on how God is using this space right here to be doing great things, and how we believe that God can continue to work with us and work with this space to do even greater things here in Wayne, throughout Pennsylvania, and all around the world. And you're going to have an opportunity to share during this service how this church and how God, through this church, has made a positive impact on your life. But guess what? You don't even have to speak. And so if you think that you could share 1 to 2 sentences about how the ministries of this church have impacted you, I invite you to stay after the service. Downstairs, we're going to have some workshops. And again, you'll hear more about it, but you don't have to say a word. You can share without speaking anything. And on the week after that, and in 3 weeks, we're going to be focusing on faith, on how God has been faithful and what our faithful response to that is. At the end of the month, we're going to be focusing on prayer. Specifically, we're going to be praying, God, what do you want to do through us? And we're going to be ready to move as we pray that prayer because we're expecting that God will be answering our prayers and telling us to move. And then finally, on the first Sunday of next month, we're going to make our commitments of how much we're going to allow God to do through us, through you, through me, and we're going to have many, many more times to think about this, to ponder this as we go through the process. So my invitation for you is to take part in the process. Start thinking about what you're grateful for. Start thinking about the impact that this church has had on you. Examine your own life of faith and what God might be calling you to do next, you and no one else. Start praying, expecting God to answer you in prayer, and get ready to move.